Should a man always pay for the first date?
What are the cliches? What's the normal etiquette out there? What men and women think about who should pay on the first date?
Well, normally people say men should pay for the first date. And I think that's probably the consensus amongst most people, because it's also kind of a tradition. So I think usually people think that men should pay for the first date. Although it has changed a bit because times have become more modern. So now I think, people might have different opinions about it.
I think that men are still stuck in having pride being traditional with that etiquette, but women aren't. So women are modern and men are still stuck in old times when we date. And that's the disparity I find. So conveniently, I think women love men in an old-fashioned way, turning up like their grandfathers, paying for the date. Of course, you get free stuff, you get treated nice, it feels good, comfortable, safe, you're respected. But I don't think many women are turning up in an old-fashioned way on the date.
I do think that it kind of depends on where you live as well. In Holland, we're much more open-minded about like more 50-50 or equal relationships as well. But we don't look at that negatively. I feel like that's looked upon very negatively in the US, for example. But I feel like in Holland, at least in my experience, we have kind of a different take on that. Because I have had more equal relationships that were more kind of 50-50. And they work just as well as relationships where, like this relationship with you, is more of a traditional one, I feel like. So both can work, but it depends on where you live. Like people have different views on them, I think.
Yeah, I feel from what you've said to me and from what I've experienced of Europe, women don't get offended by kind of men not being this overly romantic Hollywood movie on dates. They're fine if a man is fair. If he's like, I'll pay for my meal and you pay for yours. Women don't tend to get offended in Europe because it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's reasonable, that's fair. Whereas here, if a man just wants to be fair, women get offended. If a man just says like, oh, we'll go Dutch, we'll go 50-50, she can't say anything, but at the same time, she's like, yeah, he's not attractive to me. Because it's like, if he doesn't want to treat me like a Hollywood princess, that's not love.
Yeah, I feel like in Holland, we are pretty fair with dating. Like there is a stereotype about Dutch people, like that we always go 50-50 on bills. There is a lot of truth to that. I would say that in my experience with dating, very often the guy still pays. But I think the difference is that, at least for me, I was always prepared to go 50-50. And a lot of the time, I would also offer to pay for half the bill. Like when we're done eating, then usually I'll go, so do you want to split? Or, just to offer. And then sometimes he'll be like, yeah, let's split. And then we'll split. And then other times he'll be like, no, I'll pay. But I think Dutch women, we're more prepared to pay half the bill. And we don't have a problem with that. Like we don't automatically expect the guy to pay.
The term going Dutch is even known in the West like the 50-50 thing. And women don't like it. They find it offensive almost. But I actually, thinking about it now, it's one of the reasons that helped me respect you very quickly. Going Dutch means there's a sense of fairness and balance, like 50-50. You don't expect more than what is reasonable. It's like, why would you get offended if he doesn't pay for everything? Why would you get offended if it's not all about you? It's kind of a bit egotistical. And so I actually respect the 50-50. Look, I generally like it as a guy, my inclination will be to pay for the bill. But it's just interesting how in the West, women just expect everything. And the proof of him loving her is him giving 100% and her not giving anything. That's true love in the West, which is kind of perverted when you think about it.
I think that also really has to do with the way that people are raised and the differences in how people are raised. And I think in the US, women are really raised as princesses to think that they're princesses and they deserve everything. And maybe they get too much of an ego or they become too entitled. And then they expect a lot, And in Holland, I think we're raised to be very independent, very self-sufficient, but we're also fair people. You know, and it's not just with splitting the bills when we go out to dinner. It's also with other things in life.
It's like it's unrealistic to expect this guy to give everything and like you give nothing and you sit back like a celebrity. You know, it's kind of ridiculous. It's like the only way women in the West see romance or true love is if they're a celebrity and the guy's groveling like a fan. You know, but that's an imbalance. That's not a partnership. That's not someone you can rely on. If you need to be a diva and he needs to be paparazzi chasing after you.
Yeah, but in my opinion, if I put myself in that situation, it also wouldn't feel good to me. Like if I met someone and we would go out on, let's say, 6 dates, right? And every date he wanted to pay, like he insisted on paying, like it wouldn't feel good to me. Because for the first date, if he pays, yes, that's like nice, it's traditional, it feels good. Second date, I'll offer to pay now, you know, because we kind of go like one time you pay, one time I pay, that's fair. But if you keep insisting on paying, like after a while, I'm gonna feel uncomfortable and guilty because it's not fair. And I think that that's kind of a good trait to have those feelings of this isn't fair.
Well, I've always had a big sense of fairness, of balance, and you do too. And I think that's good. I think that's a reason you and I connected, even if it wasn't conscious. We both value fairness and balance and, you know, being reasonable. And I think as a woman especially, I've always found it weird how a woman can be very comfortable with a one-sided relationship where he gives everything and she's quite happy giving nothing and then wondering why she's annoyed. I don't think there should be a rule. But you should be very open and not apologize for what you think is proper. So I, for instance, I wouldn't on a first date take a woman to an expensive dinner, but I would take her to just get maybe a place where you can get a snack or a bite to eat, but mainly I just catch up over a coffee because I want to get to know the person to see if she's worth spending more time with. So I don't usually spend a lot of money on a first date. But I wouldn't feel uncomfortable if she offered to pay, if she was really like, no, I'll get this one. And if she's showing interest and saying, oh, you can get the next one. I have no problem paying on the first date. I have no problem with that traditionalist aspect. What I do have a problem with, my biggest gripe, is women pretending to offer to pay. And this is the reason why I wanted to have this conversation. I really dislike it today when women, they go on a first date pretending to take their purse out and say, oh, do you want me to pay half or do you want some money? And they only do it as a fake gesture, as a test if the guy will go, no, I've got this. Don't get your purse out if you're not honest about it, because on the first date, if that's a game you're playing, and I know you're playing a game, because I'm going to take you on your word. When I go on a first date, I want to be able to trust you, my first impression of you. If you offer to pay, or if you say, let's split the bill, do you need some money? I will take you on your word. But if I'm assuming you're playing a game, that's not a good start for me.
That's actually so weird for me to imagine, to have that mindset of pretending to want to pay the bill, but then you don't.
Because you know what I think? Whenever I've had women sort of, do you want me to chip in? Do you want to go 50-50? What I think then is that they're being honest. They don't want to take advantage of me, or they're not sure about me yet. They might need to go on another date and they don't want me to pay for them because they don't want to feel like they owe me something. You know, whatever it is, I take them at their word because I don't know where they're coming from yet. But I don't like that lying, pretending to be nice, but really you were hoping he would pay for everything. That is really sleazy to me.
Well, I think it's very simple. Obviously, you should take them at their word. And then if afterwards they become offended or angry or whatever, then it's very clear to you what kind of person they are and that you probably don't want to continue on with them.
Guys are sick of being used where the date goes nowhere and women pretend to be the nice person. I offered, but he paid for it. I think a lot of guys think that girls already know that they're not going to have a second date. They let him pay and they think, well, guys just want to pay. No, we don't. If we knew we're never going to see you again, we'd be happy to split the bill.
True. The thing that I really find ridiculous is when women say, the man has to pay because I put all of this time and effort into my makeup and my looks. That to me is so ridiculous. First of all, he didn't ask you to put all of that effort in.
Exactly.
You could have just shown up in jeans, t-shirt, no makeup, brush your hair, because that's what he's gonna see if you two end up together anyway.
That to me, if that's the only comeback you've got, my looks and how I present myself, it was all for you. Otherwise, I would have turned up without my hair combed, without makeup, dressed in a tracksuit. It was all for you. That's bullshit.
Yeah, but it's also incorrect, I feel like. Because if you go to work or you go to your friends, you're also going to dress nicely and put on some makeup. You could go to a date just like that. You don't necessarily have to do anything extra when you go on a date. You already have makeup at home. You already have your clothes at home. So it's also an incorrect statement, I feel like.
Yeah, that's like a guy saying, well, I went to the gym for the last 10 years for you. No, you didn't. You're a random person you came across on a dating site this week, and they might be impressed, but if it doesn't work out, or you're going to say, well, now I'm not going to go to the gym because it didn't work out with Nancy on that one date.
Well, I think it would be nice for men, especially in Western countries, if women would at least offer to pay. Because I do think that especially for the first date, it is a nice thing if men offer to pay, or even if men pay. But it also depends on where you live. But I think it would be nice if the woman at least offers to pay. Like, I think if I were a man and I would be dating, that would really be something I'd be paying attention to.
In the West, it's not going to happen, babe, because women already offer to pay, but it's meaningless. They don't mean it.
Yeah, but I don't think it's useless, because if you're out on a date with a woman and then she offers to pay, which would be something that you really appreciate, but then you find out that it's fake and she actually didn't mean it, that's all you need to know. And then okay, this is not for me. And then you can, move on to the next one or whatever. So I actually think that's a very bad trait. That's something that's not nice to do for a woman. But I think that's actually very useful for a man to see, because it's very clear what kind of person she is. Something else that we've talked about a few times, something that really, it kind of bothers me, like I find it very unfortunate, is that obviously for men and women, it's very different to date. Like, especially how men and women approach the first date is very different. I feel like women are in a much better position than men. And what I've said to you before is that I wish that men could just not tolerate shit behavior from women like women would from men on a date. Because it's a very different attitude. Like with me, for example, if I'm on a date with a man and I'm like really not liking him, or he does things that I really don't like, and that would deter me from continuing with him, I would just like end the date, or after the date not see him anymore. Like, it wouldn't be difficult for me, right? But I feel like for men, because they have this biological inclination to really like women, it's more difficult for them to just get up and leave, or to not tolerate things from women. And I find that very unfortunate. I wish men could do the same, because I feel like if men would stop taking shit from women, then women would probably change their behavior. So I think that that's very unfortunate.
Yeah, but it's not going to change anytime too soon until we start stop censoring guys, stop calling even things that guys say, or competitive behavior aggressive. Like men over these last couple of generations have grown up without fathers, by single mothers, being told by society that they're worthless. It's a woman's world. Guys are just becoming more and more invisible. And so for a guy to now have the courage and the self-esteem to go, you know what, no, me, to put himself in front of women when he should, and say, no, hang on, that's not fair. No, you're not going to do that, because it's correct for me to now be in charge, or to tell you to shut up, or to tell you that you're wrong. Guys are just being brought up by society and single mothers to be shamed into submission and into silence, and you can't say these things. Whereas women can be as aggressive and say certain words, but when a man says it, it's like saying the N word. The only way they're going to get women is to be nice and lower their kind of competitiveness, old school masculinity, or anything like that. So The only way I'm going to get a date or get a woman into bed is do everything she says and be quiet and submissive and give a woman everything she wants because she's on dating apps and she could have the choice of any man she wants.
What would you recommend for a guy in a Western country who wanted to date women, and he asks you, like, I don't know how to approach paying for dates? What would you recommend?
I would say there's nothing wrong with paying, but don't go to a fancy restaurant on the first date and then be pissed off if you're the one paying.
No, definitely. I think on the first date, both parties should be ready to pay. I think if a man asks a woman out, then he has the right to pay for the whole bill or to ask to split the bill. And I also think that a woman, when she goes on a first date, she should be prepared to split the bill.
I think in the West, you really ruin a man's chances of success with a woman he's just met by saying, I expect you to split the bill with me, unless he says it before the date. Go on a date expecting that you'll have to pay, but go on coffee dates if you've got an issue on paying on dates or if you don't want to be used. Go for a coffee date, go somewhere but don't go to a dinner.
Yeah, I was going to say that too, that as a man, I do think you can do things to lower the risk, like don't just continually date women and take them on first dates. Like obviously then the chances are very high that you're going to meet women that aren't really what you're looking for. So go on dates with women that you think you really might be compatible with and that you really might end up with, And then also what you said, I think is a good tip. Like don't go to super expensive restaurants, but just ask if she wants to grab a coffee or, because if she says no, then you know where you stand. So I think just by asking women stuff and seeing their reaction, that will really tell you what kind of person they are. Yeah, I think in Holland, the whole dating vibe is just a lot more, like it's not that serious, It's just like fun. It's more fair. Like you just go on a date to have a good time together. But as a man, I think it's much nicer to date in Holland, probably, at least in my experience, like going on dates with men, because it is so more normal to split the bill and to ask to split the bill. And then that's fine. And I think a lot of the time women also offer that just because it's polite, but then we also mean it. Like if they say, yeah, okay, let's split the bill. And that might happen. That's also something because that's actually really nice for men because throughout the date, you can kind of see as a man, okay, do I really like this girl? Do I think I'm going to go on a second date with her? If you really like her, then the man will have the chance to pay for the bill because he really likes her, and then he can show that by paying the bill. But if it's like, we're not really a good match, like you still have a nice time, but it's not really a match, then the guy could ask, yeah, let's split the bill. And then that's fair, So I feel like in Holland, the whole vibe is much more relaxed. It's much more fair. It's not that serious like in America, like with all these rules and stuff. The dating scene in Western countries, at least from what I've seen, has just become very, very toxic. And it's just not a nice place to be. And everyone's just playing games with each other and kind of like fighting each other. And it's just not good. Because that's not what dating is about. It's about just having a nice time together and getting to know each other. And if you like each other, then you can go on a second date. And if you don't, then that's fine. And you go your separate ways.
You asked me a question before about what advice you'd give to men, what they can do. What advice would you give women, especially in the West? How could they improve their dating life?
I don't know if I could give them advice, but if we're talking about the type of women that always expect men to pay, or women that always go on first dates because they want men to pay and they've got that entitlement, I don't think I could give them advice because they probably don't want my advice.
How would you approach dating in the West, given of what kind of picture you see here?
Well, I would go on a first date always ready to split the bill, because that's how I was raised in Holland. Yeah, I don't know. It's really difficult because I can't imagine what it's like to date in the West. Mm-hmm. But I would just be myself and just be very upfront and open with everything. And if he kind of gives me the same back, then that's good. And then maybe we can move forward. Mm. But if I start to notice that he's playing games and like it's not really going to go anywhere, then I'm going to probably stop it.
Yeah, I would just say, yeah, for men and women, don't play games, be honest, be direct, don't manipulate, and expect that you're both what you say is what you mean. And don't expect the other person to know the rules or the games. And I think both parties, men and women, will have better dating lives.
I also find it really unattractive when men are very vague or they're kind of playing games. It's very unattractive to me, and that's probably because I am very direct. So when other people aren't, then it's just like, what are you doing? Like, just tell me what it is. Like, just talk to me. Like, how are things? What do you want? And then if you're like vague and you're going around things and it's just like, you're wasting my time. Like, just tell me how it is,
I think men and women both think they're being mysterious or smooth. But to me, it's bullshit. Yeah, I agree. Like, you go on a date to feel secure and see the person clearly. And if you're vague, you're not helping.
Yeah.
Like, just be direct.
You know how I said before that I think it's really important to look at people's behavior and their reactions, and that it's actually really simple. If you just look at their reactions, they're telling you something, so believe them, right? And then you can make the decision of, I might give this another shot, or no, this is over for me. I think it's actually when men or women are being very mysterious and they're being vague and they're kind of playing games or playing hard to get, that's also something. They're telling you something. That's the behavior that tells you something. I think that actually means that they're not really that interested. Because if you really like someone, you're not going to play games. You're going to go for that person. At least that's how I work. If I really like someone, like I've even gone up to guys that I've liked and asked them if they were single. That's how direct I am. If I really... Yeah, that happened to me.
I believe you, but I'm laughing because that is so foreign to the way women act here.
Yeah, that happened to me at my last school that I was at. There was a guy in my class that I liked. I thought he was very cute. I just went up to him and asked him if he was single, and he had a girlfriend, but he was really cool about it. He was like, "Oh, it's so cool that you asked me that," so it was fine. But I think if you really like someone, you're not going to play games. You're going to go for that person. You're going to put in the effort. So I think that when people are playing games or they're being quote unquote mysterious, they're telling you that they actually don't really like you that much. So that's another sign that they're giving you. So when people show you behavior and reactions, you need to listen to that. Like they're telling you something.
Yeah, on a date, but most people go on autopilot. But I think that's good advice. Really pay attention. If a little red flag pops up at the back of your head and you think, it's nothing, because what's overriding your eyes is like you just like them, you think they're hot, you really want this to turn into your fantasy. You're so positive that you're not questioning any little warning flags that pop up. But I think people love this mysterious nature, or they don't believe in themselves, they don't think they're worth much. And so if they put on this mysterious act, they don't say things, they play these vague games, they think they can fake their way into a relationship. But at the end of the day, you can't. It won't last. I know until I changed, until I was more honest with what I wanted and speaking up and being truthful and direct and not playing the games, my dating life didn't improve. And until each person does that, is honest and stops playing these games and stops expecting more than they can give, and be more reasonable. Like this Dutch method, it's normal, it's fair, it's reasonable. Like you're not expecting more than you give. And it gives a person a good sense of you. Like, this person's fair. I like that.
Yeah, but I also think because it is fair, and it's not, you put money, you take it off the table. Because it's not supposed to be about who pays. It's supposed to be about the person. It's supposed to be about two people getting to know each other and seeing if you want to continue and maybe have a relationship. That's what it's about. And I feel like with women who have these expectations of, the man always has to pay, it's not even about the person then. Because if you really like someone, you wouldn't mind just going to McDonald's or something. But it's not about who pays or what you eat. It's about the person.
In the West, they're trying to be certain whether or not the person's right for them by their financial status. With the guys, it's their body count and this. And with the woman, it's what kind of job he has and what kind of car he drives. That's how they're going to be sure this is a good guy for me. He's high value. Nothing to do with their personality, nothing to do if you're compatible, nothing to do with if you both like the same things, if you're both introverts and extroverts, if you're homebodies or not, if you like going traveling or none of that. It's is he a cookie cutter, successful, financially successful guy who can provide for me? And with him, it's like, is she hot? How many people has she slept with? It doesn't really matter who she is. You could just replace her with another woman and she'd be the same woman you'd pick to have a kid with. And you could replace this man with another man and he would still be the guy you would commit with. It's so hollow and shallow. It's stupid. And I think these games, they try to form a blueprint to make them sure that they're dating the right person, but they don't want to judge if the person's nice or not, whether they're compatible.
Yeah, but I do think that because it is so obvious, it is so obviously not about the person anymore in the West. I do think that you then have the advantage that if you have a clear mind and you go into the dating life, it's actually going to be pretty easy to figure out who is for you and who isn't for you.
Yeah, if you're prepared to have the lots of like, I don't care about rejecting women who aren't for me. They will take whatever they can, and they will take the worst women that use them for dates and meals and paying for dinner.
And that is what I find so unfortunate. Like, that's what I mean with what I said before.
Yeah.
I wish it was more equal for men and women, and that men also had a big pool of women to choose from, so that they wouldn't have to take their shit from people, and they could just get up and leave and look for someone better. But they don't have that same opportunity that women have. They're not in the same position.
Unfortunately, in the West, the supply and demand, women have all the dating power. They run the script, they control the narrative, and a man either has to play their game, be rich and successful, and offer nothing but his material thing to secure a relationship or even go on a date. He just can't go on a date via his personality, where a woman can judge him based on the person he is. He's a financial object, and in men's eyes, women are just sexual objects. We've reduced each other to objects. I'm glad I wasn't even looking for you, but I'm glad you found me.
I did find you.
Yeah.
I did find you on YouTube.
Yeah. You didn't find me to date me, but I'm glad you found me anyway. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave your comments down below and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.